My name is Anita Freeman, and I turned 48 the day everything quietly snapped into place, or maybe fell apart. I wasn't expecting balloons or confetti. I've never been that kind of woman. Birthdays, at least mine, always felt like obligations people fulfilled out of routine. But I always showed up for everyone else's. Every handmade card, every last minute gift dash, every late night grocery run because one of the kids suddenly needed cupcakes for class, that was me. The steady one, the calm one, the one who carried the weight without complaint. I used to believe that being a good mother, a good partner, meant putting myself last. Quiet sacrifice. That's what love was supposed to look like, right? I guess I should back up a bit. I'd been with Daniel for 23 years. We met in college, one of those opposites attract stories I used to tell with pride. He was the bold one, the dreamer, the man who made rooms brighter, just by walking into them. I was the planner, the responsible one, the woman who paid rent on time and carried a sweater everywhere just in case. I thought we balanced each other, or maybe, as I'd realize much later, I was the anchor, while he sailed wherever he pleased. We raised 2 kids together. Jason, our oldest, had just turned 20. A sweet boy once, but easily influenced. He picked up on Daniel's moods the way a thermometer registers heat. Ella, 17, was sharper. Brilliant, sarcastic, quick enough to find your weakness and jab at it with frightening precision. I adored her fire even when it scorched me. Both of them inherited something from Daniel, that uncanny ability to reshape a moment, bend a memory, twist a truth until you questioned your own version of events. Daniel called it wit. I called it something I couldn't name for years. We lived in a nice enough suburb in a 2-story colonial with white shutters and a porch swing that nobody used. I worked as a project manager for a manufacturing firm, stable, predictable work. Daniel ran a growing interior design business from home, and while the house always looked beautiful, I paid for it in more ways than one. Somewhere along the line, our family stopped being a family and became a performance, a show, a spectacle where the punchline was always me. My routines, my quietness, my preference for structure, harmless teasing. At first, slowly sharpened into small, deliberate cuts. I'd walk into a room and I could feel the shift, a quick silence, a smirk. Someone would mutter, "Speak of the spreadsheet," and the laughter would start again. Daniel loved calling me Miss Predictable. Jason joined in. Ella, too. I told myself it was harmless, that families joked, that they didn't mean it. But deep down, the cracks had already started spreading. Take last Christmas, for example. Daniel posted a video of me trying to carve the turkey while everyone else wore matching sweaters he ordered without telling me. They all posed together while I stood at the counter, out of sync, out of place. "Mom didn't get the memo," Daniel joked in the caption. The video got hundreds of likes. Comments, too. "Poor woman. Classic Anita. She looks so confused, LOL." I laughed in the moment. Smiled even. But later, sitting alone in the garage, scrolling through those comments, something in my chest hollowed out. So when my birthday rolled around that year, I didn't expect a parade. But I hoped foolishly for something quiet. A dinner. A card from Ella like she used to draw when she was little. A hug from Jason. Something real. Instead, I got the card. We were all gathered in the dining room. Daniel's lemon cake sat in the center of the table, his trademark. Though I was usually the one who bought the ingredients. Jason brought his girlfriend Leia, who barely acknowledged me. Ella was glued to her phone. I smiled through it the way I always did. Daniel handed me the card with a grin that already made me uneasy. "We all helped write it," he said. "Open it, Anita." That should have been my first warning. On the front was a cartoon woman drowning in paperwork. Inside, in bright red marker, someone had written, "Thanks for ruining everything. Happy birthday, Mom." Underneath, someone had drawn a tombstone. "R.I.P. Spontaneity." They all burst out laughing. Daniel leaned into Jason's shoulder, tears in his eyes from how hysterical he thought it was. We figured it was time for some feedback, he managed between giggles. Constructive criticism, birthday edition. Jason snorted. Ella didn't even look up when she said, "We should get her a planner so she can schedule her midlife crisis." The room tilted. My smile froze in place. I heard myself laugh brittle automatic like someone else was controlling my face. I set the card down gently. I thanked them. I cut the cake. And then I got up and did the dishes. No one offered to help. Later that night, Daniel was lying in bed, scrolling through TikTok beside me. I stared at the ceiling in the dark before finally asking, "Did you think that card was funny?" He didn't even look up. "Come on, Anita, don't be so sensitive." That was always the script. If I expressed hurt, I was too sensitive. If I felt shut out, I was overthinking. If I stayed quiet, I was in my head again. Never once did anyone stop and ask why I had gone quiet, why I spent more time in the garage, why I took longer walks alone, why I sat in my car some nights parked in the driveway, unable to open the door. They didn't ask because they didn't want to know, because knowing would mean admitting what they were doing. That night, after Daniel fell asleep, his phone screen still glowing against his face, I slipped out of bed, down the stairs, into the living room. I opened my laptop, and I booked a one-way flight, 30 days out. Enough time to leave quietly, enough time to see if anyone noticed I was already fading, enough time to say goodbye without saying it. They didn't notice. Over the next days, I prepped quietly, transferred money, arranged remote work options, sold a few things, cleaned out my office. They stepped over the boxes without a single question. I kept smiling, kept being dependable, kept being the ghost of the woman they thought they knew. Then the last straw came, a moment so small it shouldn't have mattered, but it did. And that's where everything truly began to unravel. The unraveling didn't come with shouting or slammed doors. It came quietly. 2 weeks after the birthday card incident, the house felt different. Not louder, just emptier. Conversations shrank into logistics, grocery lists, appointments, bills. Jason was barely home, usually out with friends or with Laya. Ella spent most nights behind her closed bedroom door, music thudding faintly through the walls. I lived in that house, but I no longer felt part of it. It was as if my presence was tolerated, not valued. One afternoon, I arrived home early and heard laughter coming from the living room. Daniel's laughter mixed with Ella's. It had been a long time since I heard them sound genuinely happy. So for a brief second, I hoped maybe something had shifted. I stepped in quietly, ready to join them, but stopped when I heard my name. Mom just doesn't get it, Ella said, with a tone full of amusement. She's permanently stuck in mom mode. Daniel chuckled, his voice light, dismissive. Oh, she's been that way since college. The woman thinks spontaneity is ordering a different sandwich. They kept laughing, completely unaware of me standing just outside the doorway. Then Ella said something softer, but I heard it like a punch. No wonder you used to talk about leaving her. The room went silent for a moment. Daniel didn't laugh this time. He simply gave a small, almost nostalgic smile and said, "That was years ago. Don't repeat that." The words landed on me with a cold heaviness I couldn't shake. Later that night, I sat in my car in a grocery store parking lot for nearly an hour. I stared at my reflection in the dark window, the gray at my temples, the tired eyes, the face of a woman shrinking inside her own life. When I finally walked inside the house, Daniel was asleep on the couch. Ella had gone out, and Jason was with Laya. The house felt hollow. On the fridge, pinned proudly with a magnet, was that same birthday card, the cartoon, the red ink, the mock tombstone. I'd left it there as a strange form of evidence, even though I didn't admit that to myself at the time. The following weekend was Jason's 21st birthday, and Daniel treated it like a major holiday. Decorations covered the house, a catered dinner filled the kitchen, music blared, and a slideshow of Jason's childhood photos played on the living room wall. Everyone seemed to be having a wonderful time, everyone but me. I was there physically cleaning up spills and refilling trays, but no one really acknowledged me. At one point, I approached Jason with a gift I'd been saving for months, a small box with a silver watch inside. "Hey," I said softly. "Happy birthday, sweetheart." He glanced at it briefly and said, "Thanks, Mom," but didn't open it. Moments later, he walked away to greet someone at the door. The box sat untouched on the table until Daniel eventually picked it up and shook his head. "Oh, Anita, you didn't need to get him something so old-fashioned." Inside was the engraved watch, time well spent, something I had hoped he would treasure. Daniel smirked and said, "You know he uses a smartwatch now, right?" Ella rolled her eyes, and Jason didn't even look back at me. In that moment, I realized I wasn't simply unwanted, I was irrelevant. After the guests left, I cleaned the mess alone. Daniel stumbled in, slightly tipsy and humming, and casually said, "You could have at least smiled more." When I replied that I did, he shook his head. "Barely. You make people uncomfortable when you get like that," I asked. "Like what?" He shrugged. "So serious. Just lighten up." When I finally confronted him quietly, not angrily, about the way he humiliated me in front of everyone, he froze and laughed in a sharp, humorless way. "Oh, don't be dramatic. Nobody's humiliating you. You twist everything." That night, I couldn't sleep. The hallway clock ticked loudly, each second heavier than the last. I had originally planned to leave in 2 weeks, slip out quietly, maybe leave a note. But suddenly, 2 weeks felt unbearable. The next morning was supposed to be simple. Jason and Ella lounged in the living room. Daniel worked on his laptop with a coffee beside him, and I made pancakes blueberry, because Daniel always enjoyed them. When I called everyone for breakfast, nobody responded. I called again, and finally Daniel walked in with an irritated look. "What's this about?" he asked. When I said it was breakfast, he sighed. "Anita, no one asked you to." Jason wandered in, scrolling his phone. "Hey, Mom, can you Venmo me $50? Laya and I want to go out later." When I reminded him I'd just given him money last week, he brushed it off. Daniel jumped in before I could say anything. "Just send it. It's his birthday week." I pointed out that it had been more than a week, and Daniel's expression immediately hardened. "You really have to make everything difficult, don't you?" Ella entered next, wearing one of Daniel's oversized sweatshirts. "Are we seriously doing pancakes again?" she said. "You always make too many." I looked at the stack on the table, perfectly golden warm, carefully made, and I simply said, "Sorry. Not just for the pancakes, for everything." Then Daniel's phone buzzed. He glanced at it, and his demeanor changed instantly. He smiled, a kind of smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. "Oh, that's Riley," he said. "She wants to confirm the design meeting tomorrow." Riley, his ex-girlfriend turned business partner. Her name had been coming up more and more lately, always with enthusiasm in his voice. As he texted her back, he looked energized, almost youthful. Something twisted in my gut. I asked Riley, "The one you're meeting at the hotel next week?" He looked caught off guard before brushing it off. "What?" "Oh, yeah. It's a client seminar thing." I said nothing at first. He noticed my expression and suddenly snapped. "Don't start, Anita. You're not going to ruin this for me, too." The room went silent. Jason shifted uncomfortably, and Ella looked up from her phone. "What does that mean?" I asked quietly. "It means," Daniel said sharply, "you drag everything down. Every opportunity, every moment. You're exhausting." Something inside me cracked, not loudly but cleanly, like a final piece falling out of place. I didn't react. I didn't defend myself. Instead, I went upstairs later that night while they watched a movie together, opened my laptop, and changed my flight. 3 days. I would be gone in 3 days. But the universe wasn't done with me yet, because the next morning, Daniel left his phone charging on the kitchen island while he showered, and what appeared on the screen changed everything. The next morning began like any other, quiet and tense, the house filled with the soft hum of everyone avoiding each other. Daniel had left his phone charging on the kitchen island while he took a shower. Normally, I never touched his phone, not once in 23 years. I wasn't the type to snoop. I had always believed that if you needed to search for proof, the relationship was already gone. But that morning, something happened without me doing anything at all. The screen lit up on its own. A notification preview appeared. A message from Riley. "Last night was amazing. You look stunning. Same time next week." I didn't touch the phone, didn't open anything, didn't scroll. I didn't need to. The truth was right there on the screen, offered up casually, almost carelessly, as if Daniel assumed I would never look or never matter. For a second, I couldn't move. My hands hovered above the counter. My heartbeat was loud enough to drown out the running shower upstairs. That tiny preview shattered the last illusion I had been clinging to. I didn't even feel anger, just clarity. A deep, hollow understanding that everything I had been sensing, every cold moment, every dismissive laugh, every late-night text he brushed off as client work had been pointing here. When Daniel walked downstairs a few minutes later, wrapped in his robe, humming, pretending life was perfectly normal, I simply watched him pour himself coffee. He didn't notice anything unusual. "Morning," he said lightly without looking at me. "Morning," I replied. My voice was calm, so calm it startled even me. He glanced at me for half a second and said, "You're quiet again. Everything okay?" I nodded once. "Everything's fine." That was the last real conversation we had. The next 72 hours passed like a fever dream. I went to work. I packed what I could into a single suitcase. I made arrangements for a cab to pick me up before sunrise on Friday. I finished small tasks that no one in the house noticed me doing anyway, laundry, trash, restocking things they would use after I was gone. That final night, I walked quietly through the hallway, pausing at the doorway of each child's bedroom. Jason was asleep with his headphones still on. Ella lay in bed, scrolling through her phone, the screen lighting her face in blue. For a moment, I wondered if I should say something, an apology, a goodbye. Anything but nothing came. They wouldn't have understood, not then. Friday arrived, silent and early. I left before the sun was up, dragging my suitcase over the driveway. No note, no explanation. Some people think leaving is loud. Mine wasn't. Mine was quiet, a whisper of a life, stepping away from the noise that had drowned it out. By the time Daniel realized I was gone, I was already on a plane heading to Portland. The first few days felt strange. Not free, just empty. I stayed in a small Airbnb on the outskirts of the city, a cramped studio with creaky floors, old furniture, and a coffee maker that sputtered like it was dying. Mornings were the hardest. I woke up staring at the ceiling, asking myself silently, what now? It was funny. When you imagine leaving everything behind, you think it'll feel dramatic, cinematic, like a rebirth. In reality, it felt like drifting without a map, numb and weightless. Daniel called. I ignored every call. Then came the texts. First confused. Where are you? This isn't funny. Can we talk? Then frustrated. You're being selfish. Grow up. You can't just walk out on your family. I read every message, responded to none. Silence was the first power I had taken back. I told my company I needed time for personal reasons and arranged to work remotely. They didn't ask questions. They never did. Days blurred into weeks. I bought groceries. I took long walks near the river. I ate alone in small diners where no one knew me. Sometimes that anonymity felt comforting. Other times it ached in places I didn't expect. Without the constant criticism, the noise in my head began to change. My own voice pushed down for years, started to rise again quietly at first, then insistently. The parts of me I'd forgotten returned little by little, the part that loved old jazz records, the part that enjoyed crafting things with my hands, the part that once believed life could be peaceful. One afternoon, wandering through downtown Portland, I came across a small woodworking shop tucked between a cafe and a bookstore. The scent hit me as soon as I pushed the door open, oak varnish, fresh shavings. A man with silver hair and calloused hands looked up from his bench. Help you with something? He asked. I told him I'd always wanted to learn woodworking, but never had the time. He laughed lightly and said, then start now. His name was Tom. He let me come by on weekends at first. He taught me how to smooth edges, raid the grain of the wood, join panels cleanly. I wasn't good at it in the beginning. My cuts were crooked and my sanding uneven. But he was patient, and something about the process soothed me in a way I hadn't expected. There was something healing about working with something that required steady hands and careful attention, something honest and tangible. While learning, I realized I felt calmer than I had in years. As weeks turned into months, I moved into a small apartment above a bakery. Every morning, I woke to the smell of fresh bread drifting upstairs. My hair began to gray more at the roots, but for the first time I didn't care. I felt lighter. My company eventually offered me a fully remote role, which gave me more time to spend in the shop. Tom and I worked well together. One day he handed me an order form from a local restaurant needing custom tables. I can't take it alone, he said. You up for it? I hesitated, unsure whether I deserved something new, something mine. He smiled. You've got the touch, Anita. Trust me. We built 6 tables, smooth, beautiful oak. The restaurant owner was thrilled. Word spread. Suddenly, we were being asked to create more pieces, desks, shelves, custom furniture. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't mispredictable. I was simply myself, a woman rebuilding. One evening, sitting by the river with the sun dipping behind the bridge, I thought about Daniel, about Jason and Ella. Did they miss me? Did they talk about me? Part of me wanted to search their names online, peek into their lives as an outsider, but I didn't. That part of my story felt distant now, like a movie I had starred in years ago, but couldn't bear to rewatch. Then an email arrived. From Jason. Subject line Mom. It was short. 3 lines. Mom, Dad said you're okay. I just want to say I'm sorry for how things went down. Ella's mad you left, but I get it now. Hope you're doing all right. I stared at it for a long time. I didn't respond. I wasn't ready. But it was the first crack of light in a long, dark tunnel. And that light was about to get brighter and far more complicated because my past was getting ready to knock on my door again, literally. Life in Portland settled into something unexpectedly steady. My partnership with Tom grew naturally, almost effortlessly. We officially registered a small woodworking business together, Riverside Woodworks, and seeing our sign hung above the shop door stirred a feeling in me I hadn't experienced since before my life with Daniel Pride. Real grounded pride. The work was honest, simple, and mine. Weeks passed, then months. I kept building furniture, learning new skills, finding small joys and routines that didn't revolve around anyone else's demands. I made acquaintances who didn't know my past and didn't need to. There was Laura from the bakery downstairs, a warm, soft-spoken woman who always slipped me an extra pastry when she saw how hard I'd worked. There were the retired men who played chess in the park and insisted I sit with them even if I didn't understand the rules. My world became small but peaceful, a life stitched together with quiet consistency and slow healing. Then one Thursday morning, as I was adding final touches to a set of bar stools, my phone buzzed. I wasn't following Jason on social media anymore, but the notification still showed a preview. Mom, please come back. We were wrong. My hands went still. I opened the post, cautiously bracing myself. Jason had written a long, raw message. He talked about how I'd always been the one who showed up, how he didn't appreciate it until I left, how the house felt cold now, how Daniel wasn't himself, how everything had started falling apart without me. He ended it with, "I don't know if you'll ever read this, Mom, but if you do, I'm sorry. We all are." I stood there for a long time, absorbing the words, with a heaviness that didn't hurt the way I expected. It felt more like a soft ache than a wound. Tom noticed the look on my face and asked if I was all right. I brushed it off, saying it was just a lot to take in. That night I walked by the river. The air was cool, the city quiet. For the first time, I didn't feel anger or desire for revenge, just peace. But peace doesn't silence questions. Sometimes it amplifies them. For the first time, I wondered if rebuilding meant staying away forever, or deciding who, if anyone, was worth rebuilding with. The answer came the very next morning. A soft knock on the workshop door interrupted the rhythmic sound of sanding. I wiped my hands, expecting a customer or a delivery. Instead, there stood Ella. My 17-year-old daughter, who once rolled her eyes at everything I did, now looked like she hadn't slept in days. Her eyes were swollen, her eyeliner smudged. She wore an old hoodie from years ago, too small for her now. The girl who used to call me Miss Predictable under her breath looked nothing like the confident, sarcastic teenager I remembered. She didn't speak right away. She stood in the doorway, clutching the strap of her backpack like it was the only solid thing in her world. Behind her, light rain tapped against the awning, making a quiet, rhythmic sound. I blinked, surprised, holding the corner of an oak slab mid-sanding. I must have looked stunned. She finally managed a cracked "Hi." I didn't answer immediately. She glanced behind her nervously, then back at me. "Can I come in?" I stepped aside. She walked in slowly, taking in the shop, the wood shavings, the polished projects stacked neatly, the scent of varnish. She ran her fingers along the edge of a newly made chair. "This is cool," she muttered. "You really made all this?" I nodded. I did. Ella sat on a tall stool, dropped her bag to the floor, and started picking at the sleeves of her hoodie with restless hands. Silence stretched on for long minutes. Finally, she whispered, "I didn't think you'd actually be here. Jason said maybe you moved on, started a new life, a new family, or something." I shook my head. "I didn't. I'm just living." She let out a short, hollow laugh. "That's more than I can say for any of us." Those words hit harder than I expected. Ella rubbed her temples. "Mom doesn't talk to me anymore. Not really. She just drinks and scrolls and pretends everything is fine. Jason barely comes home. The house is a mess. She hired a cleaner, but the woman quit after 2 weeks." Ella shook her head in disbelief. "It's like everything's broken, but nobody wants to admit it. Like we're all stuck in a bad play with no director." I didn't tell her I had felt that way for years. Instead, I let her speak. She looked up suddenly, her eyes full of something raw. "Why didn't you say goodbye?" The question stung, not in a hateful way, but in a deeply human one. I sat across from her, folding my hands to keep them steady. "Because I knew if I tried to explain, you wouldn't have listened. None of you would have. I didn't leave because I hated you, Ella. I left because I was disappearing and nobody noticed until I was gone. She bit her lip hard and whispered, I noticed. No, I said gently. You noticed when I was gone, not when I was fading. Her eyes filled with tears. She brushed them away quickly, embarrassed. I'm sorry, she said. I believe you, I replied softly. We sat in quiet for a moment as the rain softened outside. Then she surprised me. Mom's still seeing Riley. I didn't react, though. Something tightened in my chest. She says they're just working together, but I saw the texts. It's gross. He calls her baby and sends heart emojis. She even had me lie to Jason about it. She paused. And Mom blamed you for Jason dropping out of school, said you abandoned your responsibilities and left him confused. But that's not true. It's her. She's falling apart. I stayed silent, absorbing everything. Ella reached into her bag with trembling hands and pulled out a folded legal document. I recognized the formatting immediately. She's filing for divorce, Ella said quietly, and she's trying to go after your pension. She told a lawyer you were hiding money and manipulating her for years. I felt a slow, controlled anger rise. Not a flare, but a steady heat. Ella handed me something else, an envelope containing a USB drive. I took her files. She said emails, screenshots, messages with Riley Bank. Transfers everything. I even recorded her when she was yelling about it on the phone. She doesn't know I took them. I looked at her stunned. Why? She swallowed hard. Because she doesn't deserve to destroy you after everything she already did. And because I didn't understand what I was hating before. I was parroting her. But now I see the cracks, the lies. I remember things, Mom. You used to stay up late helping me study. You brought me tea when I was sick. You were always there. Quiet, but there. I just couldn't see it then. Her voice trembled. I can't fix what we did to you, but maybe I can stop her from making it worse. For the first time in a long time, I felt something shift inside me. Not hope, not revenge, but control. I took the USB drive, my hands steady. Ella watched me anxiously. What are you going to do with it? I took a deep breath. I'm going to take back what's mine. And in the days that followed, that's exactly what I began to do. The days after Ella's visit moved quickly, almost mechanically, as if my mind had already shifted into a mode I didn't realize I was capable of. For months, I had been in survival and rebuilding, in gently stitching myself back together. But now, for the first time in years, I felt something sharp and steady purpose. I started by calling Derek, an old friend who owed me a favor. Years ago, I had helped his brother get a job at my company when he was going through a rough patch. Derek never forgot that. When he picked up the phone and heard my voice, he immediately asked what was wrong. I didn't give him the emotional version. I gave him the facts. Daniel's affair, his lies, his financial manipulation, his attempt to smear me legally, and finally the USB Ella had handed me. I need discretion, I said, and I need this handled fast. Derek didn't hesitate. Send everything over. I'll review it tonight. I forwarded the files, emails between Daniel and Riley, screenshots, doctored invoices, bank transfers, and the voice recording Ella had captured. Derek called me back an hour later. His reaction was almost disbelief. Anita, this is gold. Your ex is done. The fraud alone will tank any case he tries to build. But add the infidelity, the collaborative misrepresentation with his ex-girlfriend, the altered invoices for clients. You could bury him. I'm not trying to ruin him, I said quietly. I just want him to stop trying to ruin me. Derek chuckled. Then this is the high ground with leverage. We'll file a counterclaim. If he tries anything publicly or legally, we unleash everything. For the first time since I'd left home, I felt something I hadn't felt in years: control, and it settled over me like armor. Ella stayed in town for the week. She rented a room above the bakery, and every night after closing, we sat together talking about the past, about our mistakes, about the pressure Daniel used to put on her to be clever, sharp, more like him. She confessed that she had spent years trying to impress him, mirror him, earn his approval. I didn't know who I was without his voice in my head, she admitted. That broke something inside me, not because she was wrong, but because I recognized myself in her more than I ever expected. On Thursday, my phone rang again. This time it was Jason. His voice cracked when he said, Mom. He asked if we could meet. Said he wanted to apologize properly. Said he missed me. I told him we would meet soon, not because I didn't want to see him, but because I needed time to position things carefully. If there was one thing I had learned in the months since leaving, It was that silence, when used with intention, was a powerful tool. Meanwhile, Derek moved quickly. He drafted the response to Daniel's divorce, filing, not only denying his claim to my pension, but also laying out a counterclaim for defamation, emotional distress, and attempted financial interference. And that was just the legal side. There was another piece of evidence on the USB, a forwarded invoice Daniel and Riley had doctored to overcharge one of his design clients by 40%, the extra funds funneled into their weekend getaway. One arrogant line from Riley sealed their fate. If they're rich enough for a marble waterfall in their foyer, they're rich enough to pay for our weekend. I didn't send this to Daniel's lawyer. I didn't threaten him with it. Instead, with Derek's advice, I sent the email anonymously to the founder of Linden & Company, the largest luxury home developer in our area and Daniel's biggest, most prestigious client, the one he bragged about constantly. A clean forward, no commentary, no accusations, just the facts. It took less than 24 hours. I never heard from Everett Linden himself, but I didn't need to. Ella texted me a photo the next day, Daniel standing outside his office, pale-faced, holding a cardboard box filled with belongings. He looked stunned, almost frozen. Linden had terminated his contract immediately, citing ethical violations. 3 more clients dropped him the same week. Word travels fast in high-end design circles, especially about dishonesty. Then came the legal blow. Derek filed our counterclaim officially. When Daniel received the paperwork, he completely unraveled. Jason called me in a panic, only 2 hours after the courier delivered the envelope. "Mom," he said, breathless, "he's freaking out. He's yelling, blaming Ella, blaming me, blaming everyone. He says you brainwashed us. He says you turned us against him." I felt no satisfaction, no joy, just clarity as I answered softly, "I didn't turn anyone. I simply left." Jason was quiet for a long moment. Then he whispered, "I know." A week later, I agreed to meet him. We chose a quiet park on the edge of Portland where trees were beginning to bloom. He arrived looking older than 20 eyes, tired, shoulders slumped. But there was something different in him too, something humbled. He apologized. Not once, not quickly, he apologized, over and over for things I didn't even know he remembered. For the birthday card, for mocking me, for laughing at me with Daniel, for siding with someone who made our home a performance rather than a family. "I thought being loud made you strong," he said quietly. "But you were the strongest one in the house. You just didn't yell about it." I didn't cry. I wanted to. But peace has a way of keeping emotion steady. I forgave him not because he'd earned it overnight, but because forgiveness was no longer about them. It was about letting go of the things that once weighed me down. Jason offered to testify on my behalf if the case went to court. I told him it might not be necessary. It wasn't. Daniel's lawyer, after reviewing the evidence, strongly advised him to settle. Privately. Quietly. Avoiding a courtroom became his only priority. He withdrew his claim on my pension. He agreed to a written statement acknowledging his false accusations. It wasn't public, but it didn't need to be. I had it, and I would keep it. The revenge wasn't about hurting him financially. It wasn't about humiliating him. It was about finally stepping out of the long shadow he cast over our lives. It was about showing him what happens when someone you underestimate stops holding the world together for you. In the end, Daniel didn't collapse because I struck him down. He collapsed because his lies finally had nowhere left to hide. Shortly after Ella moved in with me, she wanted a clean start away from the chaos. Jason moved into a small apartment of his own, working a new job and attending night classes. He told me he wanted to help other kids from broken homes, something he understood much better now. I kept building furniture. The shop grew busier. Tom and I expanded into custom kitchens. I hired 2 apprentices. My face even appeared in a few local ads handcrafted by Anita. Daniel spiraled deeper, drinking, losing clients, losing friends. He sent me one last email, dripping with bitterness. "I hope you're happy. You destroyed our family." I didn't reply, because I hadn't destroyed anything. I had simply stopped holding everything together. And for the first time in a long time, the silence that followed felt like victory, clean, dignified, earned. Life didn't snap back into place after the counterclaim, the settlement, or even after Ella moved in with me. Healing never arrives like a door bursting open. It's slower, quieter, more like sunlight that gradually replaces the shadows you've lived in so long you stopped noticing the dark. Ella settled into the apartment above the bakery with surprising ease. She started going to therapy twice a week, studying at the library on weekends, and rediscovering parts of herself she'd buried under Daniel's expectations. She laughed more, ate better, slept better. She wasn't healed, but she was healing. Jason, too, kept in touch. He would send updates, photos from his night classes, screenshots of his homework, occasional selfies that made him look both proud and nervous. Sometimes he called just to ask about a recipe or a tool or to share something funny that had happened at work. Nothing dramatic, nothing heavy, just the normal things we should have shared years ago. Meanwhile, I kept working at the shop. The sawdust, the grain of the wood, the smell of varnish, the quiet patience needed to coax a shape out of a raw board. Those hours grounded me in ways nothing else ever had. I started to understand why people said woodworking was a form of therapy. It had structure, clarity, consequence. You sand too hard, you leave a mark. You measure wrong, you fix it. No gaslighting, no shifting realities, no invisible traps. Just tools and technique and truth. But the world has its own timing, and sometimes the past comes back not to haunt you, but to expose how far you've come. It happened unexpectedly on a rainy Saturday afternoon. I had just finished teaching one of my new apprentices how to carve a joint with a chisel when someone knocked softly at the workshop door. I wasn't expecting anyone. Tom was out running errands. Jason was working. Ella was at therapy. When I wiped my hands on my apron and opened the door, I froze. It was Daniel, not the smug, polished man I used to be married to. Not the man with tailored shirts, confident posture, a phone always buzzing with clients. This Daniel was different. His shoulders curved inward, his hair was disheveled, his shirt was wrinkled, and his eyes, once sharp with judgment, were dimmed, almost unfocused. He looked thinner, older, like the past few months had aged him faster than the 20 years before. For a long second, neither of us spoke. The only sound was the rain ticking on the tin awning above us. Then he said quietly, "Anita, please, can I talk to you?" I didn't answer right away. I stepped back, letting him into the entryway, but not deeper. I kept my voice neutral. "What do you want?" He swallowed hard, his Adam's apple bobbing. "Everything's falling apart," he whispered. "My job. The house. Riley left. I don't know what to do." A part of me knew this moment would come eventually. You don't dismantle your own life brick by brick without eventually standing in the rubble. But I wasn't prepared for the raw desperation in his eyes. He rubbed his face with both hands and exhaled shakily. "I'm not asking you to take me back. I know I ruined that chance. I know I wrecked us. But I need help, Anita. Please, tell me what to do." I looked at him, not the man he used to be, but the man he was now unraveling in my workshop entryway. And something unexpected happened. I didn't feel anger. I didn't feel triumph. I didn't feel the urge to hurt or humiliate him. What I felt was distance, a deep, steady distance that made everything clear. "Daniel," I said softly, "I can't fix this for you." His brows pulled together. "But you always fix things." "No," I corrected gently. "I used to fix things. I fixed the house, the bills, the emotions, the fights, the damage. I held everything together. But that was the problem. You never learned to carry any of it yourself." He flinched like I'd struck him, but I wasn't cruel. I wasn't vindictive. I was simply telling the truth, something we hadn't done honestly for years. "You need therapy," I continued. "You need accountability. You need to face what you've done and rebuild your life without leaning on someone you broke." He nodded slowly, blinking hard as if trying to hold back tears. "I know," he whispered. "I know I deserve all of this. I know I messed up. I didn't expect it to hurt this much." Pain has a way of clarifying things. It's the mirror no one wants, but everyone needs. "I'm not your enemy," I said gently, "but I'm not your rescuer anymore, and I can't be responsible for your healing." He exhaled shakily and stared at the floor. For a long moment he stood there quietly letting the words sink in. Then he nodded, stepped back toward the door and whispered, "Thank you for being kinder than I deserved." I watched him walk away through the rain, small, hunched, alone. It was the last time I ever saw him. After he left, I stood in the quiet of the workshop, surrounded by the steady hum of my tools. And for the first time in years, I didn't feel tense or uncertain. I felt free. Not the frantic, desperate freedom of running away, the kind that grows slowly rooted in self-respect. Months passed, as seasons do. Ella thrived in therapy. Jason continued his classes. Rivera woodworks. Our little shop expanded into custom cabinetry, and we hired 2 more apprentices. And me, I started taking woodworking commissions that challenged me, intricate designs, custom inlays, pieces that required patience and art. When my birthday rolled around again, the bakery downstairs closed early, and Tom helped set up a small dinner table in the shop. Ella baked a cake lemon with fresh zest on top, and Jason brought candles and a clumsy bouquet he'd arranged himself. The 3 of us ate together, laughing, talking, sitting in a warmth I didn't recognize at first because I hadn't felt it in so long. No insults, no jokes at my expense, no forced smiles. Just kindness, quiet, presence. After dinner, while we were cleaning plates, Ella paused, touched my arm, and said softly, "Thanks for not giving up on yourself." I breathed in slowly, letting those words settle into the parts of me that once believed I didn't matter. I looked at both of them, these 2 young adults who had walked through fire and chosen growth instead of bitterness, and I felt a peace deeper than anything I'd ever known. Not revenge, not victory, just peace. Real, steady, earned peace. Because the truth is, I never needed to destroy him or win or make him hurt the way I had hurt. I only needed him and everyone else to finally feel what it was like when I stopped holding everything together and walked away. I didn't lose a family, I found myself, and that was the ending I never knew I deserved.